When I was younger, my dad told me, I can't remember how old I was, but I was real young. And he told me that I had a brother and a sister that were in Virginia and another sibling as well. But he tried to contact him, but his mom wouldn't allow him to contact them. And he said he tried, he just wanted to let me know that I did have another sister and brother out there. So,
Um, I didn't know until like 2009. Actually, my mother found out about my dad, and then my wife found out that I had a sister. So I just recently found out. I knew it was a possibility that I could have had brothers and sisters, but I never knew for sure. But when I
maybe.
found out I had sisters and more than one sister, I assumed I was going to be the oldest. I just assumed because my mother was 18 or 19 when she had me, and I was guessing. I didn't know anything about my father. I was guessing he had to be around that age. I was guessing, so I was like, well, I'm born in '73, so I'm assuming they're gonna have to be younger than me. I'm guessing he had these kids after the fact, but to find out that all of them are older than me, as far as I know, I mean, there's one we have no knowledge about, but
She was in Texas, Erica, and we haven't seen her. Well, I haven't seen her in years. No, because when years go by, when I was young, when he told me, it just something just faded away. In the back of my mind, I would think about it every now and then, but never really thinking that I would actually meet him. And then to see that he looks just like my dad now, never thought.
um, when I found out, I reached out to her. So yeah, I assumed I would meet her, but now that I've met her and I know about the two other sisters, well, what little I know about one, um, I probably I had this feeling I'll probably never meet them, but who knows? My wife pushed me to know who my father was. I never really cared before me and her got married, and she pushed it, and she got my mother to, the pushing her to try to find out who he was, and they had they ran across some people they thought might be family members on my father's side, but wasn't. And then she finally found somebody down, I don't want to get the wrong, but some place in Virginia. She found somebody that was relatives to my sister, and then that got the ball rolling. She was able to get a from contact number, I think my aunt, oh, cousin, and then she gave me the number for my sister. So when I called her that night, I know I guess she could tell you how.
He was like, well, I think his wife called, and well, you have a brother, and then he got on the phone, and it was like okay, yeah, and I just wasn't feeling it. I just really wasn't. I'm like, might be somebody lying. I got no brother. I know my dad said I had one, but I got no brother. Who are these people playing these games? So I thought about it all night long, and first of all, I thought about whether it was my brother or not. I handled the situation just totally wrong. I just dismissed it. So I got talking with one of my friends, and telling about the call I got. She said, "Well, it's like you might need to call him." I said, "I don't know. I just don't. I don't know." And then a little bit of it kind of went back because I was always daddy's girl, and even though my dad was dead, I mean, I still had to share my daddy with somebody. Still that thought came up. That Daddy, I thought I was the only one. That got to share him. But I thought I got a brother. I always wanted a brother. So I said I need to call. I really need to call him. And then I called him. I called him from work that day, and here we are.
Yeah, because when I called, I could tell she was like, who was this? I figured it was a lot to digest at the time, so I
Yeah.
was like, you want to call me back, or you want, I think I said you want me to call you back, but I decided not to even call her back. long before I even hung up, I said, I'm going to let her digest that and I'll talk to her tomorrow. She ended up calling me the next day at work. And I think you told me you went on the internet.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah, I guess you can explain
yeah,
that.
Let me check him. He said Mandel Jackson. You know, you can go and Google anybody, get all the information. So that's what really got it when I saw him. I mean, there was no doubt. And because I picked him out, it was him, I guess, people that worked with him on the job, other guys with all the pictures of his business, silent code features, but a lot of them were in it. But I kept looking and trying to figure out, you know, something that might look like my dad. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's his son. There was no doubt in my mind, you know, when I saw him. You know, I knew, you know, it wasn't a hoax, you know. Nobody trying to get my little change I got. You know, it was real. And then I wanted to reach out to him more because I knew, you know, we were related and we were brother and sister. So I wanted to have a relationship with him.
For me, it's still overwhelming. It's just hard to believe that I have sisters. I grew up as an only child, so it's kind of overwhelming when you find out when you're 30 something. You find out who your father is, and when you find out he's been dead 3 years prior to you finding out who he was, and then to find out you have one sister and you meet that sister, and then you find out you have two more sisters. You know, it's kind of overwhelming. It still trips me out from time to time. Like, wow, I got sisters. You know, I have a sister who lives in in North Carolina. It's still because when I was little, I never really was concerned about who my father was, because most of the kids that grew up in my neighborhood lived with just their mother. So it wasn't nothing like I see one of my friends with his father and his mother, and I would get jealous or be like, "Oh, where's my father at?" Everybody pretty much just lived with their mother in my neighborhood, so it was nothing that I ever was concerned about. My mother asked me like maybe twice growing up, "Do you want to know?" And I'd be like, "No, not really." She'd tell me his name and then go out one end, out the other, in one end, out the other. So I didn't really. So, yeah. Yeah, it surprised me because I just assumed they did what they did and he rolled out. I just assumed, I looked at him as the bad guy, not really knowing the true story. And then after I find out about her and I meet her, more stuff started coming out. My mother started telling me things about she was involved with somebody that was in Vietnam at the time, and when he came back, he assumed that I was his son. So it was a lot of situations there that I'm still not clear on, but it also brought to light that he didn't just make a kid and leave. It wasn't that just wasn't that straightforward. It was more variables to the story. So it was more things in the story that it made sense now. It makes more sense now.
And that's one thing that I really hate that he never got a chance to meet our dad. But more than anything is that I want to know what type of person he was. And he would have never left. And he told me that he tried to contact you. He told me that your mom wouldn't. And I didn't know, at the time your mom wouldn't have anything to do with him. And I know how he loved me and my kids. And I know, and more than anything, I want you to know that he didn't. I just don't believe that he just would have just left like that. And I always think about, even though we found each other, I really wish that you had got the chance to know him, because he had issues. I'm not gonna cover that up. He was a heroin addict, but he loved us. And it and I know that if he had a chance to see you, because he treats my son like it's his son. He always have. There's not a Christmas that ever went by that he wasn't right there. When I first had RJ, he would call me asked me, is he still breathing? Is he okay? It was like his life, my kids were. So I just want, hope that that, if he had the opportunity, he would have been that father to you. I know he would.
Yes, and in a sense, it does. It does. But like I said before, I was never upset to begin with. I just didn't have no desire to seek him out. I always felt like, well, if you want, if he should be seeking me out. He should be looking for me. That was my attitude. But I was never bitter, so it doesn't really like bring peace to me knowing that he was trying to find me because I didn't have anything. I didn't have that I know of. Maybe it's deep inside it. I don't know. Maybe subconsciously, but there's nothing I could think of where I was like, well, I don't, have any bitterness against him for what he did. So, yeah. Oh, I'm very surprised. The story she told me, like when she first told me my story could be a documentary. I was like, okay, yeah, I was kind of a little dismissive, like it's been plenty of stories. Somebody was on drugs and got off drugs, but then when I came down here and I actually met her and she told me more of the story, I was like, wow, and she told me she was in school and she was working on these jobs. She had this nice house, I didn't know what to expect, and then I see this house like, wow, they make my house look look like a little hut. So
Wow, it's just so much. It's the possibilities just endless. Because when I first found out I had a brother, went online and said, oh man, got a documentary, whatever, making videos, movie, whatever. Okay, cool. Okay, I can see this. Then we came and I met him, met his wife, and the kids now saying, Uncle Mandel coming. It's like family. When the rest of the family came together for Thanksgiving, I think it was, um, just to see, I'm a family person. I've always been a family person. Just to see that we can spend birthdays together, we miss birthdays, we miss Christmas, we miss Thanksgiving, all that, even though it's been like over 30 years later, I think it was ordained by God that it happened as it happened, and we still got family trips we can do, still got a lot of stuff that we can do, and I just think it's awesome. It's really awesome.
Um, yeah, I would assume so. I take it like this. And I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. When I did find out about him, a friend of mine said sometimes it was meant for you. Maybe it was just meant for you to just grow up with your mother.
Yeah.
Maybe if he was in your life, maybe you would have got on drugs. You never know. So I took what he said, like, my mother did a good job. Of course, she probably feels she could have did better in some areas, but she did a good job. I'm here. I never went to prison. I never was on drugs. I never killed nobody. All these all these things that should be a given that we shouldn't do, but we find out the people that's growing up in the urban areas, fall to these type of things. So
Yeah.
Maybe it was meant for us to meet at this time. So I don't look at it as I'm jealous I didn't have my father in life because it was meant to be. I think it was meant to happen that way.
Yeah, and then a lot of times, growing up with our father, to see him struggle with the heroin addiction, you know, at times we could come home. It was like the day before Christmas, we didn't have any heat, or got a radio in your room, and the next week it's gone, and he's saying it's in the shop, but he sold it so he can get his fix. Growing up with those things, growing up with people coming in and out of your house, white people, black people, whatever, going in the back room getting high, your little girl, and you're seeing all this stuff, something's wrong with daddy, but you can't put your finger on it right then. So, some things you might be glad that, he didn't have to experience that. My mom and them, they never were married, but they had been together for so long, and to see, you know, the pain with her. I mean, she worked all the time, you know, just to make sure the lights stayed on, and you know, we had food on the table because, you know, he might take his money and get high with it, you know, and he was still a good dad, and I love him to death, but there was, you know, a lot of issues there, you know, and I'm sure just like a lot of people, myself, that want to kick the habit, but he never could, and it took him to his grave because he was born with only one kidney, and when that failed, and because of the drug addiction, it just, you know, it was just one thing after another, you know, with his health. So he actually died of kidney cancer. But it was through all the years of the drug addiction for many, many, many years. And he did seek treatment probably about the last couple of years before he died, you know, but, you know, nobody wants to go through that, you know, to see a parent that's strung out on drugs, and then, you know, later on, we both were out there in the streets together, you know. I'll be copping from somewhere that's like, your daughter just left, you know. So it might be, you know, like you said, it might be a good thing that, you know, I think everything happens for a reason, and I'm just thankful that we got this time together, you know, this year.
Yeah, cause this ain't actually I had found out about my father and my sister around the time both of them were on drugs. I might have been dismissed. I was like, oh man, I couldn't find out my father and my sister, you know, on crack. You know, I might have been dismissed. I might have looked down on them. You know, how wrong that is. That might have been my mind frame back then. You know, say I met them, you know, early 90s or late 80s. And I probably wouldn't have even attempted to try to get to know them. So everything happened for a reason.